All right. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Tom Cyberlick. I am a leader in our Wireless Center of Excellence. And today we continue our series of revamping your network management, the ultimate guide to migrating from Cisco Prime. On today's topic, Cisco Prime migration to Meraki Cloud. And our guest today is Drew Lentz, who is an engineering product manager in our Meraki B. Say hi, Drew.
Good morning.
So thanks for joining us, Drew. We appreciate it. And just so you know, we're going to redo this series. These are all going to be these are all recorded, and the contents will be sent out to you all via email in the next couple of days. But these are all recorded, and we will be doing this series again moving forward. And if you missed it live or any of the other sessions live, please don't hesitate to join us so you can ask your questions to our panel. And speaking of our panel, we have a Q&A panel ready to answer any questions you may have. So ask your questions in our Q&A window down below in your WebEx screen, and we will get those questions answered promptly. And if we don't get to them, we'll answer them live. One thing, last bit of administrata, please fill out the survey at the end. We really appreciate your feedback, and we want to make our content as relevant and appropriate as possible. And your feedback really helps with that. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Drew. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. It's morning where I am. Hopefully it's a bright and shiny day for you as well. My name is Drew Lentz. I'm one of the engineering product managers within Cisco Wireless. And as you may have heard recently, there's this great thing happening at Cisco where all of our wireless is coming into one happy team. And we're having a great time learning a lot of lessons from each other, a lot of great history within this organization for wireless and what we're doing to help move that forward. And today what we're going to talk about is that opportunity to move forward after the Prime EOL announcement. What can you do? Where can you go? And this series has been dedicated to that. We look at option 1, option 2, and option 3 on the screen here. We've already covered both of these in the previous webinars, moving from Prime to DNA Center, moving from Prime to DNA Center, managing in the Meraki Cloud. Monitoring in the Meraki Cloud, or moving all the way over into the Meraki dashboard. What I'm going to talk about today is down the option 3 path. So this is if you're thinking cloud first, this is what you want to do. You want to jump on the bandwagon of moving to this enormous data center in the sky, if you will. This is where it happens. You want to make that transition from Prime over into Meraki dashboard. There's a lot of great ways we can help with that. And first, what I want to start off with is talking about some of the hardware that's available right now. If you're looking to transition over, if you're doing that hardware refresh right now, and you're looking at a way to have one foot on either side of the fence, if you will. We've got the CW series, 91, 62, 64, and 66 access points. They're dual persona access points, which means you can manage them and monitor them either with DNAC or with Meraki dashboard. So there's a great way to start to transition your network over if you're looking to move into Meraki dashboard, or if you just want to make the leap over, these access points support that as well. I'm running 9162s here at my house, and let me tell you, these are some great access points. I've had a lot of fun with them, and they've got a lot of really great options. It represents the latest and greatest in all of Cisco wireless engineering, not just from the Meraki side, not just from the Catalyst wireless side, but combined into one incredible hardware package. So again, what we're going to talk about today is moving into the dashboard. And on our last series, we talked about cloud monitoring for Catalyst. And the quick overview of that was that now you can take your Catalyst stack, your switches and your and devices, and you can put them into the Meraki dashboard, and you can have that cloud monitoring. It's simple, it's scalable, extremely extensible because of our use of APIs, which we'll talk about later in this webinar. But also, you can start to look at that single dashboard for monitoring your Catalyst devices. So these are some of the slideware that was made available in the last webinar, where you could see how you could integrate Catalyst switching in the Meraki dashboard. And one of the things that's on the roadmap that I did want to touch on is the ability not just to have your Catalyst switching, but your Catalyst wireless in there as well. So upcoming on our roadmap for these devices are going to be the 9800 series controllers and the integration of monitoring, specifically monitoring of those 9800s in the Meraki dashboard. So you can see we're making this shift to get everything into into giving you as many options as possible, whether you want to be on-prem with DNAC or you want to be cloud-based, via the Meraki dashboard. Both of these are going to give you some incredible options. And as things start to change, you'll see that more and more features and functionality become available across. And we get to talk a little bit about that. Here's a quick view of what that would look like. These are slides that were shown off at Cisco Live. And so what we show here is the ability to bring that 9800 series controller into dashboard and be able to monitor it and monitor the access points, the clients, grab some of that really important, rich information about client connectivity, integrate that into dashboard, leverage the power of Meraki dashboard using Catalyst switching and Catalyst wireless. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A. Ask us a question, reach out to us, reach out to your sales engineers and your solutions architects and your product managers, and we'll be happy to guide you through some of this. So that being said, what I want to drill down into is a little bit of a change in the way that we think between what we've done traditionally using the single controller management, device management, controller management, prime management, DNAC management. And I'm going to flip slide decks here for just a second, because what I want to show off is what we have the ability to do in dashboard. It changes the way that you think about monitoring your network, about managing your network, about what you're trying to do with it. And Meraki's cloud-based solution, cloud-first solution, is, it's one of the standards. It's one of the ones that invented the ability to do this so long ago with that Meraki acquisition. There was all of this, great excitement about what this could mean in the future. What happens when you can do all this incredible management, you can bring those dashboards into a cloud-based control, and you can monitor and manage your network without having to use on-prem equipment, without being constrained by hardware devices, so on and so forth. And so now that future is here. As we enter into this next iteration and life cycle of Cisco Wireless, you'll see that what we've done is we've taken, again, the best of both worlds and merged them together to figure out how we can take advantage of it. Huge improvements in performance efficiencies, but one of the things that stands out is the ability for us to deliver incredible AI ops and incredible information that we can use to determine what's happening on that network and how it can help you with what you're doing, managing and monitoring these networks. And the key here is just the scope and the scale of what Meraki has. There's no one that can look at us and say, man, y'all, maybe there's not a lot of experience there. Absolutely not true. 4 million customer networks, 12 million Meraki devices online in 190 countries, 191 million daily end user devices. This is something that is absolutely enterprise ready. It's scalable. It's ready to do what you need. We're ready for you to put it to work with the addition of those CW access points into the portfolio. Now you've got some differentiating hardware that's out there, moving into Wi-Fi 6E and that 6 gigahertz spectrum. There's a lot of really great things that can happen. But that's only half the story. Half the story is what it can do for you. The other half is what the rest of the networks can do for you as well. So it's not just about your network. It's about leveraging that information from everything that we have access to and understanding how that can help you simplify your day-to-day operations. And it's not just with wired devices or wireless devices. With Meraki, we've got a full suite of devices. I've got a little sensor sitting behind me that tells me when I've got brownouts. The MT40 tells me what my power looks like in my house. And I can use that sensor to feed data into my network to understand why network events are happening. I can leverage our MV series of cameras to understand what's happening in our physical locations from a security perspective. And I can build processes to have the analytics from those cameras brought in, not the video, but just the events that are triggered when someone enters a room, when a room is empty. When a thermostat changes based on a humidity or temperature sensor. There's a lot of things that we can do that now the network isn't just about what's happening on the network itself, it's what's happening in the environment around the network. And you can gather all that data, you can bring all of it into the Meraki platform. And this is important because when you think about the transition from older technologies, from prime into what you're trying to do with the future of your network, you want to keep context about everything that's happening. It's no longer just relegated to the information that you can get immediately from that device. Now you have access to physical security, network security, full visibility across your entire network. And the Meraki platform makes that simple, secure, and intelligent. These are three of our pillars that we want to make sure that we stick to. It's got to be Meraki simple, right? It's that Meraki magic we talk about. And how do we take that magic and build it into what we're doing with the rest of the Cisco platform? This is that start of it. You'll see more and more come down the line, but right now, this is that beginning. How do we take everything that we can do and make it available to customers? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop that share here, and I'm going to share open another deck because I want to talk about the way that we get that done, because this is really important. There's a lot of differences in the way that you manage a network using Meraki dashboard versus using Cisco Prime, for example. And those differences aren't necessarily a bad thing. Those differences are just about the way that you work and what it is that you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And so I want to look into those for just a second here. Let's see. Let me do a double check and make sure my slides look okay. Tom, you seeing me good over there?
I'm seeing you good.
Fantastic. Okay, so when we talk about moving from Prime and moving into Meraki dashboard, again, it's not necessarily about a feature comparison and finding feature parity between what you can do on Prime and what you can do on dashboard. There's a lot of it there. Let me tell you, there's a lot of it there. There's all of these features that you use, every feature that you use day to day, you have to look at that and say, well, can I do what I'm doing in Prime? Can I do that in dashboard? Can I actually do that? Because there's a lot of questions about that. If I'm trying to configure a device or do software image management or do role-based access control or reporting or any of that, you really want to make sure that when you're moving into dashboard that you're going to have the ability to not lose any features or functionality coming from Prime. That's key, right? That's if you're sitting, in the chair and you're going to be responsible for this, you want to make sure it can do what you need it to do. But what I would like to do here is challenge you to think a little bit differently, not just on a feature by feature comparison, but on intent-based networking. And so if you look at these three pillars, these 3 bullet points that I put together about 11 minutes ago, what I want you to do is look at from the left to right. For basic management, this is where we all started, getting into the CLI, plugging in our console cables. I feel like if I don't travel with a console cable, I'm missing a piece of my arm or something. So I always have a console cable with me just in case. You never know when you're going to need it. But when you think about that on that basic management side, configuring individual devices, configuring switches, configuring access points, configuring blades, whatever it is, that was the first iteration, right? You would get in there and you configure it, and then the advent of controllers, right? And so you could do the basic management on those controller devices, and you can manage multiple devices using single controllers, multiple access points, so on and so forth. Then along comes Prime, right? Changes the game, changes the way everybody's doing things, and says you've got this central opportunity to manage multiple controllers, thereby multiple devices, all throughout your entire organization. And you start to look at how that iterated into DNAC, right? So DNA Center came along and said, look, let's take what we're doing with Prime, let's make it better. Let's add more intent-based networking to that. And now you move over to the far right-hand side, which is that intent-based management of your networks. So moving into DNA Center, you've got a lot of these concepts and ideas about what you're trying to do with your network. So you're telling DNA Center, this is what I want to do, and making sure that you build those templates and those workflows to support what it is that you're trying to do and push those out at great scale. Along those lines are what we do in dashboard. It's not about the single configuration parameters. It's about building the templates, building the workflows, building the ability to have your network do something, and then pushing that out across the board without having to go and touch every single device. So I want to put that in context, because when you talk about the scale of these networks that you are working on, that your customers are working on, that your friends are working on, and that other Meraki and Cisco customers are working on, these are massive. And you have to have the ability to scale to these massive size networks when you're pushing out roles and when you're pushing out, firewall rules or whatever it is. You want to be able to push this to as many devices as you can and make sure that that config is going to land, that it's going to be properly implemented, and that it's not going to cause problems down at the end of the road. And if you look at the sheer scale of what we've been able to do with some of these networks, it should really make you feel good about moving over to it. There's a lot of pretty important networks, including yours, hopefully, that will rely on this Meraki dashboard. So with that in mind, talking about intent-based networking and understanding what it is that you're trying to do on a day-to-day basis, what we did is we reached out to a lot of different customers that are using Prime right now, and we said, what are the 5 main areas that you focus on day-to-day operationally, and how can we show off that we can do that in dashboard in a way that makes sense to you? So instead of saying, does it have report A, does it have PDF, this, we wanted to say, what are you really trying to do? Because we want you to focus on how you're doing not how you're doing what you're doing, but what you're trying to do with it. I hope that makes sense. So these 5 that we're going to walk through today are your configuration and firmware management, your network visualization tools, monitoring and troubleshooting, network service assurance, which to me is absolutely one of the most important things, and then down into reporting, understanding how you can extract data from your network to make sure it's performing the way that you want it to. So within these, there's a couple of bullet points underneath, and those are things that we're going to touch on. And so I'm going to do a combination of slideware, and then you're going to see me stumble a little bit as I go back and forth between my screen, because I want to be able to show you some of this in real time. I'm going to use my home network for some of it, and I'm also going to use our SFO12 network, which is a big demo network that we have in San Francisco, to show you what some of this looks like. All right, deep breath. Let's get into configuration and firmware management. Everybody's favorite topic, because at the end of the day, this is one of the most critical and important things that you can do on your network. You have to be able to configure your network, and you have to be able to manage those devices that are out there. And traditionally, that may not have been as easy as everybody would like. And then with the advent of Prime and with the advent of DNAC and now into Dashboard, you can see that there's a lot easier ways to do that. And so I want to start with two things: onboarding devices and role-based access control. And I'm going to kick it off with role-based access control, because within Meraki Dashboard, you've got 4 key areas where you can provide role-based access control. Let's start from the right and work our way to the left. The very edge of that is network only. For your guest ambassador, you want someone to be able to go into a specific network, see what's going on that network, and have access only to one specific network. And the hierarchy, right, is within an organization, you can have multiple networks. So like, let's say that I've got the Drew organization, but I've got the network in my house, I've got the network at my office, I've got the network at my kids' school that I manage for them. Let's say that those are different networks inside the organization. You want to be able to give people access only to the information that they need to have to complete their jobs. And that may come as that guest ambassador specifically to a network. Now, if you want to give them monitoring access one level higher so that they understand what's going on the network, client counts, associations, what's happening on that network, so that they can do deeper level troubleshooting, but you don't want them to go in and have full administrative rights, then you can look at monitor only and read only. So those are 2 keys there: monitoring only on the network, and then monitoring on read-only access for your organization or network. So I could give someone access to my entire organization or just to those specific networks. And then, of course, just full admin. So it's key to understand these, right? And what's great about it is not only do we work within these 4 groups, but there's also network tags, and there's tagging that you can do to define specific network devices. We talk about that here in a little bit, but there's really a great application of these, and depending on your use case, feel free to ask us questions about how this works. But we want to make sure that you understand that there are different ways that you can interact with your network, or that let's say customer service representatives can interact with your network, or different teams can interact with your network so that they are able to do their jobs, but limited to what you need them to be. All this documentation is available online, and that's one of the key things. It's what they teach us all in when you first get hired here. They say, look at the documentation, look at the documentation. So if you jump online and you find our documentation, I can click on it. It might open up in our browser. I guess you can't see it. Documentation.meraki.com. You will find every single piece of information that we have access to on there. It's a very, very helpful resource, not just for this, but for everything as you make your way into the world of Meraki Dashboard. So once you've defined who has access to your network and what access they have, the next thing you can do is onboarding. Simple onboarding is just that. I pulled out a wireless access point. This is an MR70 that I had, and the way that it works is when you take an access point, either on the box or on the actual piece of equipment itself, it has a little key down here, and so you've got your serial number. And when you take that serial number, you can go into your configuration and you can go into your inventory and you can add that serial number. And once you add it, then you can add it to a network. And what that does is it gives you the ability to inherit any of the configuration parameters that you've put in there for, let's say, my house, or let's say my office, or my kid's school. It will automatically adopt those depending on where you place it and what rights you want to give to it. So it's great because you can either load it in as an individual device, or you can load multiple in there. This is a screenshot. On the left-hand side, you'll see the way that this looked in Prime infrastructure. On the right-hand side, you'll see the way that we do this in Meraki. So you go in, you hit the you click right here, boop, and you hit claim devices, and it pops up and asks you for that serial number. Once you put that serial number in, it loads it into your inventory. You select it by clicking on one of the checkboxes, and then you just add it to your network. Now, you can unclaim them if you want to move them. You can show which ones are being used, which ones are being unused. You can see what the model number is. You can see when it was claimed. And if it's associated with a specific order, you can see what order it was associated with. So this is a great way, a great snapshot of what we have for our inventory management. You can quickly unclaim them and move them over to other networks if you need to. It's very simple to do, but everything is web-based and it's very easy to understand and use. So the key part of that is also the licensing. You want to make sure that whatever devices you have a license to operate on your network. If your license status is not current, a big red bar appears across the top of your screen. You can easily click it and it'll take you to your license management page and it'll show you what's going on with your licenses. In this case, an MC phone. It's interesting. Whoever took this screenshot, that's an interesting throwback there. But if you look here, we've got a bunch of switches, MS1 2024s, 48s. We've got the low power and the full power MS1 2048s. And we've got 10 licenses for each of those, and currently there are no devices using those, for example. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have enough licenses to operate all of your devices that are out there. Usually purchase the licenses along with the devices that you acquire, or you purchase them as packs, and you can upload those. Licensing is a little bit different in Meraki Dashboard than it is in Prime, but that is a whole separate conversation. So if you have questions about specific licensing, please reach out and we'll be happy to answer those. But this gives you the ability to look at all of your licensing for all of your Meraki products and those Catalyst Wireless products, soon coming into Dashboard. They're all going to be on that single page, so you don't have to go back and forth and figure out where your licensing is. From the configuration perspective, again, once you take the serial number of this device and you upload it into your inventory and you add it to a network, it's going to inherit whatever configuration you've already made on your network. So if your network is set up with different SSIDs, if it's set up with different security parameters, if it's set up with different type of access control, WPA2, WPA3, whatever it is, it's going to inherit those configurations as you load it onto your network. And basically the access point powers up. It jumps on your network connection. It calls home. It identifies, from a firmware perspective where it needs to be. We'll talk about that in a second. Gets its firmware. Once its firmware is on there, then it figures out which configuration it needs, drops that configuration onto your access point, and it's up and running. It doesn't take too long for it to get up and running. It's a very, very quick process, and it's just part of that network as it goes. So if you need to go in and configure specific settings for those access points or for the specific areas that those access points are located in, you can absolutely do that. But if you want to do quick and easy, you plug it in, it pulls the configuration down in your own line, and you can start working through it. This allows you to easily configure specific sites across your entire stack, and it's got the validation of the configurations built in. So it's going to give you some red flags if you're not filling out what you're supposed to, or if you're incorrectly doing something. It's going to pop up and let you know, hey, you're not doing this right. You need to make a change. What I'll do now is let me jump over just to show what that looks like. Let me jump over into my other screen here, and I'll switch screens. Let me stop sharing for just a second here. Switch it up a little bit and jump over and show you what that configuration looks like. I'm going to share out my my home network here, and I'll show you a little bit about our configuration. Check this out. There we go. So here's a configuration. This is my house. This is my home network. The configuration of the SSIDs are in here, and this shows you the different SSIDs that I have set up. Energetic was the name of an old production company that I had back in the good old days. I was a concert producer, and so Energetic was the name of my concert production. And so it's stuck. That's the name of my Wi-Fi. And I've got my IoT network operating on 2 gig in here as well. I've got my 6E network, and I've got the kids that I lock them down. When it's not summertime, I make sure that I keep them locked down and inside my home. But when you go and you load up your network, if I click on my home network here, what it's going to do is it's going to show me just an overview. Whoopsie. It's going to show me an overview of what's happening on my network at any given time. And here you can see all the different clients that are connected to my network. You can see what's happening on the network. And from a configuration perspective, I can look at settings for my entire organization, and I can see all the different settings here that I want to put into it. And again, these will all be carried over once I just onboard any different access point. I can see who my administrators are. I can sync everything across my config. I can make sure that it's set up, if I want to go into wireless and configure access control or firewall and traffic shaping. Well, that one didn't come off right today. This will give me the ability to set these parameters. And once I move that device into my specific network, it will inherit that. So you can see here, I'm pulling it from external DHCP. I've got some different things here that I have blocked for group policies. You can see my passwords that I have. And back on inventory, if I go into organization, then down here into inventory, this is that first part that I was talking about. So this gives me the ability to come in and quickly claim a device. I can type in the number right here. I can claim that device by hitting the claim button. It will add it to my network inventory. And then when I choose one of them, if I take one of these devices here, I can unclaim it. I can once I unclaim it, I can move it into that network. I can download all of this information as a CSV, as you see right there. I can add in my catalyst switches, and once they're in there, that configuration is just inherited. And if I go look at this, that was the general side. If I go look at my overview of my wireless devices, I can go look at my wireless access points here, and it shows me all the devices that are in my network, what my MAC addresses are, what my firmware versions are. All of this configuration is pulled across immediately as soon as I'm onboarded. So that's a pretty cool way to do it. A little bit different than what we did with Prime, but just a really cool and clean way to configure your devices. Again, you don't have to, no console cables. I mean, I still carry it, right? But I think that's like PTSD, right? I have to have a console cable with me. We also have configuration automation. So at scale, you could go in and you can create those different templates, and you can push config via template all the way across the board to as many devices as you need to. It's a really great way that you don't have to focus on a single network or a single organization. You can go in and say, you know what, I just want to affect teleworkers, or I just want to affect MX devices. You can go in and build automation that will help you out with all of that. One of the great things also is comparing devices or comparing configurations to identify deviations. So what this does is you can go in and you can choose different networks. You can hold down the control key, or it was the Apple key. Didn't it used to be called the Apple key? You can hold down the control key or the Apple key, and you can select multiple devices, and it'll show you just on the right-hand side, either red or green. Green means everything's, the exact same. Red means there's something different, and that could be a different WPA key. That could be a different type of WPA, WPA2 versus WPA3. It gives you the ability to look at your network and see where those deviations exist. So if they do exist, you can quickly identify what's going on your network. Now, along with that is also tagging. I mentioned this a little bit before, but there's two types of tags that we support within Meraki dashboard. One's a network tag and one's a device tag. So you can go in and you can tag specific networks, so you can push config to them, or you can make changes to them, or you can apply security settings to them, or you can go down to the device level. I have device tags on my network. Let's see if this works. I have device tags on my network for my daughter's iPad. I mean, use it as applicable, right? I'm not managing a big university network here, but if I was, I could be doing the exact same thing. I can go in and I can look specifically. Let me see here. I can go in, whoopsie, and I can look for her device, and I can look at that and I can identify her device, and I can lock it down with a tag to make sure. Let's go look for status. Hers is going to be offline, and client type is going to be wireless. And iOS is going to be an Apple iPad. This isn't the last day, but she lost her iPad. So right before she went to camp. So that might not be the best example. But what I can do is I can go in and I can look at these individual devices, and I can add a tag to them to make sure that, like here's my family room device here. We can go in and you can look at all these different things here. We can add some notes to them, and we can group them, and we can set them up so that they get specific settings for security, or they get specific settings for applications that they have access to. Again, I mentioned I blocked some of the stuff at my house, and I use grouping and tagging in order to do that on specific devices. So let me go back and do this and share again. All right. So you can use those tags across your network for all that flexibility. You can make access to cameras, for example, on our MV series. You can give read-only access to it. You can give analytical access to it, or you can give full access to it, so they can see the video, interact with the video, or just see the video, or just pull the data from the video. So there's interesting things you can do there, all the way across what we mentioned at the beginning with that role-based access control in the dashboard. Those are things you can do at the network level. For device tags, again, SSID availability. You can turn SSIDs on and off. Overview for your organization, looking at specific location analytics. There's a lot you can do by tagging those devices. So again, this goes back to that intent-based intent-based management, intent-based networking, it's not about can you configure groups of devices? Well, the answer is yes, but in dashboard, you configure groups of devices by tagging them, not by creating groups, right? So that's an interesting example, but there's a lot of things that it's about what you're trying to do on your network and how you achieve that using dashboard. One of the things that makes this, we talked about extensibility before, is the Meraki APIs. And the Meraki APIs are incredible. There's a lot that you can do with this. I have a friend who's got a Meraki network at his office, and what he does is he has the MAC address of his boss's iPhone. And what happens is whenever his iPhone gets in the parking lot and it associates to the network, it sends him an alert to let him know that his boss has just shown up. That's a fascinating one, but it's a real life scenario. That was like one of the first introductions to Meraki APIs, was us tinkering around with that. But there's a lot more that you can do with it. A lot of the features and functionality that are on the Meraki dashboard have an API to back them up. Again, documentation.meraki.com. You can get online. You can see everything about this, and it exposes all of the information, north and southbound APIs that we have access to. And there's a lot of creativity that you can put into this, whether it's extracting information from the network or it's pushing config and information to the network. And along that line, what we have is something called the Meraki Marketplace. And you can scan the QR code, you can jump online and look for our Meraki Marketplace. And if you do that, you'll see that we've got 30 solution categories, from asset tracking, guest Wi-Fi, point of sale, IoT, and security. And we've got 185 ecosystems apps with over 500 use cases. And these are people who have taken our APIs and built applications around them to help extend what you can do with your network. So there's a lot of really great functionality that can be found in our Meraki Marketplace. If you subscribe to our LinkedIn, I think every month we do an update. We say, hey, here's our featured Meraki Marketplace vendor. So there's a lot of really great things that you can do. And again, this is about thinking about what you're trying to do with your network, not from a feature perspective, but what is it that you're trying to do? You're trying to get guest Wi-Fi. You're trying to get splash pages. You're trying to make sure that IoT security is hemmed up nice and tight. Based on what you're trying to do, there's a lot of things that Meraki gives you the power to do, not just within dashboard, but leveraging the APIs and the partners that we have. Now, to get into firmware management, on firmware management, this is fantastic. Firmware management is one of those things that is difficult to do right, and I think that we really nailed it with Meraki Dashboard. Prime did a phenomenal job at firmware management and doing SWIM and all the other great stuff. Here, what we can do is we have that single view where we can push those firmware upgrades across our network. You can schedule those upgrades. You can make sure that you either do them immediately, you can have them rolling, you can have them for specific devices. There's a lot that you can do on a device by device basis, as well as entire network basis. So if you just, in this case, if you just want to upgrade your cameras, or if you want to update your access points, if you want to do them at separate times, you can do that, or you can have the network do it for you. Based on your preferences, it will push everything. And those firmware lifecycle components are really, really cool, and they're presented in a great way on the Meraki dashboard. And this is a snapshot of what we see on the dashboard. And you can see on the right-hand side, down at the very bottom, one of my favorite things, call me a glutton for punishment, is release notes. I love to read the release notes. I like to understand what each one of these iterations of firmware is doing. So down at the bottom, you can see it says MX15, .42, MX16.16. On the bottom, you can see what's happening to devices, whether it's MX devices, the MG gateways, MS devices, MR access points. It'll show you the latest firmware versions that are available for each one of these devices that are on your network. And right underneath there, you can click on release notes. You can either have the latest stable firmware revisions, or you can have release candidates, or you can sign up for beta. And the betas work really well. It really is up to you and what you're trying to do with your network. And maybe you want to put beta stuff in your house or in your lab, and then run only stable, production and firmware on your equipment. You can do that. You can mix and match it the way that you want it. What's great is it gives you a quick view. Right above that shows your firmware status. How many networks have a status warning? How many have a critical warning based on what's happening with their devices? Is there a critical newsflash that's gone out about some, different firmware settings or different firmware revisions, and how do you do that? Again, all in a single page gives you a great way to see a quick glimpse what's happening on your network. And when we release these and we push them out, we're not just pushing them out and saying, okay, here you go, firmware, you're out in the wild, hope it works. That's not really how we do it. What we do is we put that firmware out there, and we've got this steady cadence to the way that we do firmware releases. If you look on the right-hand side, we've got the release, it stabilizes it. We've got our monthly firmware beta release. The wider rollout goes to help us with the adoption metrics, and then that cycles around security, fixes, adding new features, then back into that cycle. The cool thing here is the second and third bullet point. I'm pointing with my fingers. I hope you can see the purple and the gray there is the proactive monitoring for product stability and the proactive outreach. This is an interesting thing that I love about Meraki is that when we push firmware out to these devices and we push firmware out to networks, we monitor that and we see how well that push is going. And we've had 3 issues that have been resolved due to rollback analysis, 12 customers that were immediately impacted by issues during rollout, and we were able to identify that and go, wait a minute, something's not working there. Let's proactively change that. Let's push either a new release. Let's identify what's happening. Let's really understand why it's not working the way that it should. And then we can go back to our 7 years of monitoring to help evolve this process to see that when we push that firmware out there, making sure that it lands properly the way that it's supposed to so that you don't have any downtime, you don't have any outages on your network. But it's important to call this out because we do watch as that firmware goes out. We make sure that when it gets out there that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So moving on to the next section here, network visualization and tools. The network visualization tools is really, really neat. On the left-hand side, this is that old school way of building your network map and your network topology. You had to go in and you had to create those locations, you had to create those groups, you had to create the devices in those locations, you had to set them up and figure out where you were going to place them and make sure they don't overlap. There's a lot there, right? On the right-hand side, you see this is a snapshot, and I can load it in the background because it takes a while if I get on the wrong network. Back at one of our test networks has a couple thousand nodes on there, so it takes a little while to load. But what happens is it automatically lays out that topology for you. L2 and L3 topology is available, and you know what? Let's do it. Let's see what happens. Let's go ahead. Let's jump back over into my. We'll go to my home network. That one's probably a little bit easier, right? So if I look here, we were looking at my family room client. Just whenever I'm looking at a client or whenever I'm looking at a device, you'll see right here the access point is my east hallway, and I can click on topology. And what topology will do is it will immediately, this is one of those very very hardcore networks, right? You can see that I've got a camera in my alley and I've got an access point in my back porch. And you can see that topology lines itself up and it shows you where everything in the network is located. If I flip over and I go to a larger network, like let's say this is that larger network that I was talking about back in San Francisco. If I go to that larger network, I can click on topology and it'll take a second here to load once I click on it. But this will show me what's going on the network, and it'll show me how everything fits in. And this goes to talk about, what we have. This guy right here, I think I have, like 6 nodes or 7 nodes on my network. And you can see quickly and easily when I click on it, it shows me how many clients are connected. I can click on that device and that device will load up and it'll take me directly to it. So here's my east hallway access point, for example, and I can see which devices are on it. I can get a quick glimpse of the SSIDs that are on there. A lot of the information is given to you right in front of your face, and all the way down to channel utilization and historical health and what's associated with it. But if I get back over onto the topology side, sorry about that. If I get back over here, you can see this one's a little bit more interactive, if you will. There's a couple devices that are on here, and this might look more like some of the networks that you're used to working with. And you can identify what's happening. You can identify exactly where everything is, and you can see the servers that are in this closet. You can see how this is fed. You can see how many direct clients are in there, and you can scroll through and you can get down into these individual devices. There's an MR56 with 283 direct clients. If I click on that, that allows me to jump right back into where it is and what it's doing and see how it's performing. So the topology view is a lot more rich, if you will, than it's ever been, and contextual, right? Understanding where it is, how it's working, what happens on that topology view. That client to cloud connection becomes really apparent when you can trace it back as it's working through your network. That's a little bit different than some of the things that we've seen before, but that's a really good illustration of what that topology view means for us. So topology view is phenomenal there. And again, this is that client to cloud connection visibility. This shows you from left to right, the client, the access point, the switch, the core switch that's connected to all the way up to the router that it's pushing the data out through. And it gives you the ability to not just understand what's happening on your network from that perspective of how it's connected. Let me flip back over and show you something really neat. If I go back into this network that I was looking at, let's go to my home network, and I can go into my wireless overview, and I want to go look at, or here, let's go to network clients. I want to see the clients that are connected. I want to see this, I'm plugged in on this device, but let's see, my Bobcat miner, there's a good one. Let's go check out the Bobcat miner. So if I look at the Bobcat miner, it shows me which access point it's connected to. And you see as I mouse over, it pops up even more information, right? You're not showing this on the PowerPoint presentation. But this, again, is one of those big things about moving from Prime into Dashboard. The visibility that it gives you is tremendous. As I'm looking at this, I can see it's an MR33. I can see my LAN IP. I can see the overall channel quality. I can see usage on the 5 gig radio, what channel it's associated to. I can immediately initiate a ping to this access point or do a packet capture right from here. So it's not just about understanding the topology of your network. It's about interacting with that topology. And instead of having to open it up in Prime and look at it and say, okay, well, here's a network. Let me click on it, and it kicks open a CLI, and it does, or opens up the GUI or whatever it is. This gives you the ability to keep it all in one little space and do all of it. So again, back to intent-based management. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Okay, well, I'm trying to establish that my Bobcat miner is having an issue connecting, to the network. Well, why? Okay, well, the 2.4 channel looks good. I've had a little bit of a 96% latency, less than 64 milliseconds. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? And I can click on it, and it gives me a lot of detailed information here. But this goes to the visibility and the components of seeing what's happening on your network. So back over here, I know I'm hopping around a lot. I hope this isn't too nuts for y'all. But there's so much that you can do when you start talking about this. And I really want to make sure that it's apparent that there's a lot of things that are out there that give you more capability in a different way. And the key here is that what you did in Prime, what you were trying to do with Prime, and what you're trying to do with your network moving into Dashboard, there's a lot more that you can do in this. But that's iterative to the generation of where we are, right? And what we're doing with network management, network monitoring, so on and so forth. Maps and floor plans, again, you can take the maps, you can upload them into our mapping component, you can drop in that floor plan, you can establish where those access points are. We've got some great new things that are coming out around this, so pay attention to what we're doing in the news. Good things are coming here, but this gives you the ability to place those access points on maps, identify where they are, see what's going on as clients move across your network. This can all be accessed via API. And on the maps and floor plans specifically, what's great is if you go back and you think about that API conversation that we were having, we've partnered with some of the best groups that are out there in the industry, Hamina and Ekahau. These tools have API integration into our dashboard right now, where you can take these maps and floor plans, import them into their RF planning tools, do your design, make sure the RF looks great, and then push it back into dashboard. So you get close to that single source of truth between design, engineering, and administration. And that all can be leveraged using that mapping component. You can look at usage patterns with locationing heat maps. This brings in the locationing information of client devices that are connected to your network, or even they don't even have to be associated. They just have to be audible on your network. You can see where people are grouping, how many devices are in that area. You can see how that traffic is moving across your network. All these are features and functions that are built into Dashboard already. Moving on to monitoring and troubleshooting. Within that, I just showed you a quick glimpse of some of those things. This still has the confidential letters up there. I apologize. I knew I missed something. It's like when you go on a road trip, you're like, what did I miss? I forgot to take the word confidential off of this. But what this gives you is management at scale overall. So if you're looking at this as global organizations from a managed service provider, you have the ability to look at all of your underlying organizations as an MSP and get quick access to making sure that you can manage those the way that you need to. And it gives you some quick glimpse information from the MX, the MR, the MS on the right-hand side. You can see what the org is, how many networks are in that organization, what their license status is, what license model they have, what's going on with the severity of any errors or issues that they're having on their devices. As an MSP, this gives you that huge opportunity to look at one screen and see what's happening all the way across the board. So that's a really great view there. The landing page used to look a little bit different on Prime on the left-hand side. It gave you that information that was on your Prime dashboard of what's happening on your network. You could get the view there on the left-hand side. How many devices are there? Are they reachable via ICMP? How about SNMP? What kind of alarms do you have? There's lots of information that you could get there. But if you look at the right-hand side, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more in depth. We've included all of the alerting right there on the page. We can show you those different, simple colors, red, yellow, and green of what's happening on your network. You can really see a quick view of what's going on your network, and that's only getting better. There's a lot of really good things that are happening that are only making it better. And this is one of them. Our wireless experience overview. This has just been released, and it's going to give you the ability to see network services as they're happening on your network. And it's great because you're not just limited to, your connection health was there, your performance health was there, your RF health was there, but your network service health was not there. So you can see how many devices are connecting to Radius, what your percentage of success is there, how many of your devices are successfully receiving DHCP leases, how many of them can successfully connect to DNS and do lookups. So now you have the ability not just to see what's happening on your network, with Prime, right? You're talking about just the stuff that's on your network. Now that you're looking at it from a cloud perspective, now you're seeing the big picture across all of your organizations, across all of your sites, across all of your networks. You're able to see what's happening in one quick glimpse as it aggregates that data for you. So there's a lot of information that is available now through some of this that you're really leveraging the power of the dashboard in order to see what's going on with that maximum visibility. Again, I'm going to keep hammering home. This isn't about checking off, does it do this, does it do this, does it do this? Absolutely, it does. It does so many of those features that are available in Prime, but it's what you're trying to do with your network that makes a big difference, right? So we talked about that client-to-cloud connectivity. This goes back to the troubleshooting side of this, monitoring and troubleshooting. I already went over that a little bit where I could show you the mouse overs and you could see what was happening at each independent path along the way. And now you can dive deeper. I clicked on that link. Let me go back over to my dashboard here for my home dashboard, and I'll show you some of these things. So I can jump in, I can see, go back to Mr. Bobcat Miner. You can see what's going on with the top applications that it's using. You can see the signal quality that it's using. You can see the average wireless latency. This is my old helium token miner that's still plugged in at my house. Anyway, so it's fascinating technology. But here I can go back and I can look at what was happening over the last hour, the last 12 hours, or the last day. I'll do one even further. Let's have some fun with my iPhone. I've got my iPhone that's connected in here, and this is going to illustratively show some of the cool things. If you look again, this from a monitoring and troubleshooting perspective, I could quickly get to my client device. I clicked on network, I clicked on clients, I clicked on my device, and I can see when it was last seen. I can see the topology of where it's connected. This is really neat. This has to do with the relationships that we have with Apple, Intel, and Samsung, and now with the Mac operating system. Now, because of those relationships, when I have an Apple device that's connected to my Meraki or my Cisco network, it's not just going to show me that it's an Apple iPhone 14 Pro that's connected. It's also going to show me the iOS version, which is pretty interesting because I can flag that right there if I'd like to. You see a little pop-up. Flag this device is inaccurate, but that is accurate, so it's okay. What this gives you the ability to do is get rich information specifically from client devices. If anyone remembers the old CCX extensions from way back in the day, this gives you the ability to automatically pull that data in from Apple, Samsung, and Intel devices, and now Mac devices as well. And this is great because it helps you understand the entire conversation that's happening. This is a Cisco or Meraki access point communicating with an Apple device. Here's the iOS load that it's on. Here's what that transaction looks like. So if I need to identify something that's happening from a troubleshooting perspective, I can go in, I can see this is pretty accurate. This is the floor plan of my house. This is where the device is located. I'm in my office right now. I can see what my usage looks like, not just over the last 2 hours, but over the last 30 days. We were out of town. The Cisco Live right there. That's why there's no data, right, for live. So I can see what's happening. I can see what my top applications are. I can click in and show details. I can see what I've loaded on there. Nothing embarrassing. That's fantastic. LinkedIn right there, Apple services, Spotify, iTunes. You can see what I do. I can look at the policies. If I have any device policies, I can quickly get into those and see which policies are applied to it. I can see which network it's associated with. I can initiate a ping immediately. I can see my IP address logs. There's a lot of information here from a troubleshooting perspective that really makes me feel like I understand what's happening with this device and when it's happening. So I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit because since we're looking at this, I want to look at the connections. We're just looking at that, and this shows 100% successful connections, 72 total connections to this device. This is my specific iPhone. Let's go look at the last week. Again, this all loads and gives you really cool information about what's happening. And I can see, did it fail to associate? Did it fail to authenticate? 0.2% fail in DHCP, none in DNS. Got to troubleshoot that one, figure out what's going on. Which problematic APs, like my west hallway, there you go. I had a failed connection on my west hallway. Something happened when I came on, when I went to the other side of the house. Something happened. It's like, oh man, that's interesting. I wonder what happened. So I can go look at that hallway. I can go look at the connection log specifically to this device, and I can see that on Monday, my iPhone connected to that AP with this SSID. It failed at DHCP. It made a DHCP request, but it did not respond. And then here's the information specifically about what's going on with it. So from monitoring and troubleshooting, I clicked on two things, and this is where I got. And this is such a deeper way to do troubleshooting than anything that's out there before. So when you think about troubleshooting devices, think about this as a very simple way to move in and out of your network and see what's happening. Now, if I want to go back and I want to look at the overall performance, like we were just talking about before, if I want to look at the performance of my device, I can see which applications, I can see my signal quality, my wireless latency, channel utilization, the number of clients on the APs that on the AP that I'm connected to. I can see what my data rates are. But one of the really fun ones is going back and looking at roaming. So this is a new feature that was just introduced, and this gives me the ability from a monitoring and troubleshooting perspective to look at roaming across my network. And the great thing about this is it isn't just the last 24 hours. If I want to click on the drop down here and I want to go back to the last week, I love this feature because this is something that when you think about when you used to take your car to the mechanic and said, hey, it's making this noise, and we take it to the mechanic and it's not making the noise anymore. Or when someone says, oh, I was staying at this hotel and the Wi-Fi was terrible. And you say, you send them a message, hey, what happened? Oh, well, on Thursday of last week, I had a bad connection. Oh, okay. Well, you can go back and historically you can look at that and you can see, all these look like good connections. There was a drop over there. You can see where all these connections are taking place, and you can see if there's an issue, what was happening in those bad roams, or was it a ping pong going back and forth between two APs? How many of them were suboptimal? How many of them, how many of your roams were good roams? And as you look into this, you can see, let me try and find a bad one here. You can see, like, there you go. It shows you which access point it was coming from, which access point it was going to, and what that roam looks like. And it'll tell you, this is why we called it a suboptimal roam. You went from a neg 80 to a neg 86. That is suboptimal, right? So it's interesting to see how all of this works. But from a troubleshooting perspective, it's really, really helpful because you can dive deep into understanding what's happening on your network. And through the timeline, this is skipping forward a little bit also. From the timeline, I can see everything that's happening on my device, on this client device, in the way that it relates to my network in context. Successful connection to this SSID, successful connection there. SNR 10 dB. And so if there's any issues that pop up on your network, you can click on them. I'm in a great spot here. Unfortunately, I can't show you troubleshooting because it looks like my network is working pretty well. So I'm gonna scroll here and look for a network error. But if you go to some of these network issues, what it will do is it will give you contextual information about that specific device, and it will give you some things that you can do to help troubleshoot what's happening. So I'll go and load one of the APs back in San Francisco and see if we can find some problems here. There you go. Client, Piyush's iPhone had a failed connection to that SSID, so you can click on it, and it'll say, hey, AP client position, physical interference. Check average signal strength for clients. Check the client signal strength while associating. It could also be 6 other possible causes. Maybe the AP was overloaded. Maybe it was RF interference. Maybe there was radio incompatibility. Maybe it was a client OS issue. Check association failure rate for other client iOSs. So when you come to monitoring and troubleshooting, it's not just about giving you things that you can look at to go, oh, this is fascinating. I saw a bad roam. Oh, there was a, this client didn't get a DHCP lease. Now, through this, we can give you a lot more rich data to help you understand how you can troubleshoot a little bit better. So I know we're running a little bit short on time here, so I'm going to jump back over into these slides. And through here, I talked about the guided troubleshooting. It was interesting to see that. One of the great things also is identifying all of those devices that we have out there in the world and being able to optimize your network based on networks that are like yours. So in this example, this may be a vertical of education. If you have an education network, we have the ability to combine the data of how networks are working, broadcasting SSIDs per AP. Everyone is doing one, you're doing one. How about a Wi-Fi standard readiness? You're sitting over here at 82%, and everyone else is at an 8 for Wi-Fi 6 readiness. There's a lot that can be done there, but it all leads into network assurance. And network assurance to me is the output of having a well-designed, well-configured, well-monitored network. The assurance is making sure that your network is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And in this case, there might be external threats that are affecting your network. And, I love to call this one out specifically because if you think about reporting and rogue SSID and rogue AP reporting in Prime, you could go in and you could generate a report that would show your rogue SSIDs, right? Your rogue APs. Here, there is not a specific report for rogue SSIDs. And to me, that's one of those things that really, talks to that intent-based management of your network. If you're trying to find rogue SSIDs, yeah, there's a report in Prime that does it. But why are you trying to find it? What are you going to do with it? If the intent is to figure out how to stop them or what they're affecting or who they're affecting, then this is actually, in my opinion, a better way to do it. Because here you can see this technically is a report of rogue SSIDs, but it's done in the context of what can I do to do something about it? What is an actionable thing that I can do with it? So again, I really want to challenge the way that you think about feature comparisons between Prime and Dashboard. A lot of the features they're the same. A lot of the features are similar. But what are you trying to do with it? Because there's a lot of different things you can do there. Umbrella integration is a huge component of what we have. Any of these Meraki networks you can tie directly into Umbrella. Visibility right now, we've got an RF spectrum identifier that you can get in and you can see what's happening on your network. This is going through some phenomenal changes right now as well. So keep an eye out for what we're doing with the new RF spectrum visibility. Application visibility, I just showed this, on my page. You can see what was happening on my home network. You can see what's happening, application by application. You can see based on clients, based on networks, who's doing what, and identify what they're doing, and then build use cases to define quality of service policies or blocking policies. In my case, I block YouTube and TikTok at my house. I have an understanding with my daughter that I will block these, and if she can get around them, she wins. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game. I'm teaching her to use some of that critical thinking by blocking her access to YouTube using my Meraki network. And I can do that because I've got that visibility into it. Compliance reporting was really big. PCI and HIPAA compliance, these reports are available in Meraki Dashboard. So if this is something you're concerned with, you have that ability to go in and look at those networks and identify where you may have issues, if you pass or fail, where your violations are and what those are. We do support full splash pages, and again with Meraki authorization. And also, as I mentioned in the Meraki marketplace, we've got a lot of partners that are out there in the industry that have leveraged our API to do that. The last thing I want to talk about is reporting, because bringing all this data into a report is very important for a lot of you. I know I've got a minute left, but really that's about all it takes to talk about reporting in Meraki, and here's why. You see on the right-hand side a view of our summary reports. And our summary reports, you can add and remove different things to this report itself. You can export this. You can send this, to someone who needs it. You can have it run on a schedule. You can drill down into specific devices or look at those overall networks. The reporting on the left-hand side is what you get with Prime. In Prime, it was like, here's a report for an individual thing. Click here to get it. Here's another report for a thing. Click here to get it. Our reports are a little bit different. They show it to you in a way that has live data built into it, and you can export that. But there's also the thing like we just talked about with reporting for those rogue APs. It's not necessarily a report. Sure, you can use the data as a report, but it's about making it actionable. Part of making it actionable is those alerts. You saw some of the alerting that we had on the roaming. You saw some of the alerting that we had in other locations. But overall, being able to be contextual with that information to help you do your job in plain English or whichever language it's ported to, this gives you some of that power of what we have in the Meraki cloud. The notifications are all available via API as well. We've got a number of different partners that are out there. The key is understanding what we can do. The call to action for you all: learn more, ask questions, get in touch. Please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to answer your questions. Whatever you need from us and our team, we love talking about this stuff. And I hope some of that passion came through today. I drilled down into some parts that I think are fascinating, specifically when it comes to prime migration. So if this is something that you have more questions about, please feel free to reach out to us. But again, the key here is thinking about migration differently. It's not just about, can it do this? Can it do that? It's how can it do what you want it to do to make your job and your life easier. That being said, thank you for your time. Tom, I will turn it back over to you.
Yeah, Drew, your passion clearly showed through. There's no question about that. So thanks for that great content, great presentation. And thanks all of you for joining us for a little over an hour to hear our story. We appreciate it. One quick reminder, please fill out the survey when you close this, and all of this content will be sent to you via email. Plus, check out our Unplugged Connectivity channel on YouTube. That's where the recording will be. You'll have a lot of great content out there for you to check out. Again, thank you, and y'all have a great day.